You've probably felt it. This quiet tension that lives somewhere between your ambitions and your exhaustion. On one side, there's a voice telling you to push harder. Wake up earlier. Discipline is freedom. Suffer now. Live later. The grind is the point. On the other side, there's a different voice. Rest. Enjoy the moment. You deserve this. Life is short, and you're not making it longer by white-knuckling your way through it. And maybe you've tried both. Maybe you've done the 5 a.m. routines and the cold showers. Maybe you've also done the vacations, the long dinners, the deliberate slowdowns. And still, something feels unresolved. Neither path has given you the peace it promised. Here's what most people don't know. This tension isn't new. 2 men thought about it deeply over 2,000 years ago. They came to almost completely opposite conclusions. And both of them were right, about different things. Their names are Epicurus and Seneca. Epicurus was a Greek philosopher who founded one of the ancient world's most misunderstood schools of thought. Seneca was a Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher who lived 4 centuries later. Wealthy, politically powerful, and deeply troubled by both. They never met. But they were in a long argument across time. Epicurus said, "Pursue pleasure carefully with wisdom and you will find peace." Seneca said, "Pleasure is the trap. Virtue is the only real wealth. Chasing comfort will hollow you out." Same question. Radically different answers. By the end of this video, you won't have a verdict because the honest answer is more interesting than a verdict, but you will understand exactly what each man was saying, why he believed it, and what it might mean for the specific tension you're already living. Epicurus lived in Athens in the 3rd century BCE. He gathered his students not in a grand academy, but in a modest garden outside the city walls. That choice was deliberate. He was already making a statement about what the good life looked like. Simple, unhurried, close to the people you love. His philosophy begins with a deceptively bold claim. The purpose of life is pleasure. But before you picture anything indulgent, stop. Because what Epicurus meant by pleasure was almost nothing like what we mean today. He divided pleasure into 2 types. Kinetic pleasures, the active, stimulating ones. A feast, a celebration, the rush of a new experience. And catastematic pleasures, a quieter word for a quieter thing. The stable, background contentment of a body that is not in pain and a mind that is not in fear. Epicurus was almost completely uninterested in kinetic pleasures. In his letter to Menicius, he wrote that pleasure is the beginning and end of a blessed life, but that this pleasure is not continuous drinking and revelry, or the enjoyment of fish and other delicacies. What he meant was ataraxia, a Greek word for tranquility, the absence of anxiety, the quiet that comes when you are not striving, not fearing, not wanting. To get there, Epicurus said, simplify. Strip back your desires to the ones that are natural and necessary. Food, shelter, friendship, rest. The more you need, the more you can lose. The more you can lose, the more you will fear. And fear is the enemy of peace. He also said something that most people find surprising. Friendship is one of the greatest pleasures available to a human being. Not wealth, not fame, not achievement. The presence of a few people who truly know you. That is where happiness actually lives. Epicurus himself was reported to live on bread, water, and occasionally a small piece of cheese, which he called a luxury. He was not performing poverty. He was demonstrating that the threshold for peace is lower than almost anyone believes. Now, here is where Seneca would interrupt. Lucius Annius Seneca was born around 4 BCE in what is now southern Spain and lived most of his life at the center of Roman power. He was a playwright, an essayist, and for a time the personal advisor to the Emperor Nero, which meant he lived daily inside wealth, danger, and moral compromise. He knew Epicurus. He read him carefully. In his letters to Lucilius, Seneca quoted Epicurus more than almost any other philosopher, which often surprises people. But Seneca was using Epicurus to argue against him. Seneca's charge against pleasure, even the careful, minimal pleasure Epicurus described, was this: it puts you in the wrong relationship to the world. If your happiness depends on conditions being comfortable, then your happiness is always at the mercy of conditions. And conditions will change. They always do. The Stoic framework begins with a line that Seneca returned to again and again. Some things are in our control, and others are not. Health, reputation, wealth, pleasure, these are preferred indifference. Nice to have, not the point. What is always in your control is your reason, your judgment, the quality of your character, and virtue. Living according to reason, acting with courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. That is the only genuine good. Everything else is contingent. In his essay on the happy life, Seneca was direct. The happy life is one that is in harmony with its own nature. That does not mean a life free from difficulty. It means a life in which difficulty does not unmake you. Seneca himself was exiled twice. He faced execution under Nero and ultimately was ordered to take his own life. The accounts of his death, which he approached with calm, writing and philosophizing to the end, suggest that the philosophy was not merely theoretical. He had stress-tested it. His warning about pleasure is sharp. Comfort is seductive precisely because it feels like peace. But it is borrowed peace. It depends on the comfort lasting. The moment it ends, and it will end, you are left with nothing but the habit of needing it. Here is the tension that neither man fully resolves, and that is exactly why it still matters. Epicurus and Seneca are not as far apart as they first appear. Both of them were suspicious of excess. Both believed that most people are unhappy because they are chasing the wrong things. Both said that the path to peace runs through subtraction, not accumulation. Strip back the noise. Know what you actually need. Live closer to that. But they diverge on one critical question. What is the ground you stand on? For Epicurus, the ground is tranquility. Arrange your life so that it produces the least anxiety and the most quiet contentment. Choose simple pleasures. Protect your peace. This is not laziness. It is wisdom about what sustains a human being over time. For Seneca, that ground is not stable enough. Tranquility is still dependent on external conditions cooperating. The Stoic ground is internal. It is the quality of your character, which no external event can take from you. Pleasure, Seneca would say, is something that happens to you. Virtue is something you do. Now bring this back to the tension you woke up with. Hustle culture is not Stoicism, though it borrows Stoic language. Stoicism is not about grinding harder. It is about maintaining your integrity under pressure. Seneca would be deeply skeptical of anyone who sacrificed their health, relationships, and inner life for achievement, and called it virtue. And wellness culture is not Epicureanism, though it borrows its aesthetics. Epicurus was not telling you to consume your way to peace. He was telling you to want less, not more. The treat yourself message, taken seriously, would have horrified him. What both traditions are actually asking is this: do you know the difference between what genuinely sustains you and what merely distracts you? That distinction, not any single philosophy, may be the most important thing a person can get clear on. Epicurus said, "Simplify your desires and peace will follow." Seneca said, "Strengthen your character and peace will be unshakable." One man built a garden and lived quietly with friends. The other walked the corridors of imperial Rome and tried not to lose himself there. Both were asking the same question. Both paid for their answer with their life. So here is the question I want to leave you with. When you pull back from the noise, the productivity content, the self-care content, all of it, which one are you actually afraid of losing more, your comfort or your character? That answer might tell you more about yourself than either philosopher could. If you have a thought on that, Epicurus or Seneca, garden or columns, leave it in the comments. I read everyone.